Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to welcome you all. I offer you my deepest respects. Today, we have a politically dangerous topic. Because of this topic, there's some very serious debates happening on many forums and in many discussions. There are real flame wars going on in the comments and discussion threads. Genuine, full-blown ones. It's like a crap bomb went off. In other words, people just can't stop and refrain from fiercely arguing about this topic. Here's the topic. Which music software is the best? Which DAW is the coolest? Let's figure it out. Honestly, I think I have more or less the moral right to say something on this topic. To share my own, not so important. Prevden, why? Because I speak it fluently. FL Studio, Ableton, and Cubase. How did it happen? I worked in different studios, and in one there was Cubase, in another Ableton, and I teach people in FL Studio. All these programs are more or less equal for me. I can use them all right with hotkeys. Why do I teach in FL Studio? Because this program simply has the largest community, so videos about it get the most reach. And for my students, if they run into some small problem somewhere, it's easy to just Google it and find an answer in the Russian-speaking segment on how to solve it. That's all because it has just a huge community. In other words, FL is simply the most widely used. That's all there is to it. Just because FL Studio is running in the background here doesn't mean I'm some kind of die-hard fanatic who's gonna foam at the mouth trying to prove it. So don't count on that. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you there. Now, let's think about how to even figure out where to jump in. Because, well, obviously, this topic is one that more experienced folks will laugh at. Who's been around for a while? Who writes music? Because I totally get how this question sounds to those who are experienced. It sounds like, which color is better, yellow or green? Or which is better, Pepsi or Coca-Cola? Or what's better, Gucci or Dolce & Gabbana? Naturally, that's pretty much what it looks like. But for those who are just starting out, for them, it's actually a life-changing question. At least that's how it seems to them. And honestly, I get where they're coming from. Because at first, it seems like the quality of their music basically depends on the program. That once they master it, they'll be able to start making music. A lot of people don't realize that there are things that are actually more important than the program itself. For example, knowing music theory is actually more important. For instance, having a grasp of music theory is even more crucial. For those beginners watching me, let me tell you right away, don't worry about the program. You'll get the hang of it. But that alone won't make you able to write music or create. So the focus, all your effort, once you get the basics down and start to feel comfortable here, should shift to music theory. All right, let's break it down then. We have what's called the Big Seven. That's Studio One, Cubase, Pro Tools, Logic Pro, Reaper, Ableton, and FL Studio. These are about the 7 most popular programs. And then there's this small enclave on the planet of people who make music. It's actually not as large a group as, say, people who buy iPhones, or people who buy sportswear, or Coca-Cola, and so on. So you have to understand that these 7 major programs are fighting for the attention of a pretty narrow market. And they're fighting tooth and nail. So what does that mean? It means that such high competition creates a situation where it's basically impossible to fall far behind in terms of quality. It means that there isn't some clear favorite that's way ahead of everyone else. The situation is roughly like this. For me, as someone who can just open up any sequencer, depending on my mood, and make music in it. So if today I'm in the mood to write something in Cubase, I'll write in Cubase. If, for example, I'm in the mood to make something for YouTube, then I'll use FL Studio because FL gets more reach. If I feel like using Ableton, I go in Ableton. It really doesn't matter to me. But from my perspective, how does it look? It looks like this. There are slightly different concepts specifically in the design. Like, some people prefer the FL Studio interface, while others need more restrained interfaces, like Reaper or Ableton. For example, Ableton has a concept I noticed that they don't really let you dig too deep inside. Basically, their system is 2 tabs, max. So you can't really get lost in there. That's convenient, and some people just don't care about that. So it all really comes down to individual preference. For some people, this works. It's just that somehow they connect with that interface on a psychological level. Someone else, on the other hand, might prefer a different program more. So that's what concerns the interface question. Different philosophies. Well, what makes FEL different is this. It has a container philosophy, meaning patterns. For some people, working with patterns is more convenient because it's a great way to organize everything. See ghost notes from neighboring parts, and for example, quickly spot a mistake when you have three counterpoints and there's an unpleasant dissonance somewhere. You immediately notice that minor second or major second right away, just like that. But for example, in some programs, you can't do that. Like in FL Studio, you just can't pull off something like that because it doesn't have that container-based logic. So all these little things, they differ in terms of functionality by these small details. For example, in FL Studio, there's no, in my opinion, very useful vocal copying feature. So for those who get to the stage of recording and editing vocals, it really helps because after that, you save time. Time on tuning the vocals and all sorts of warping of the vocals. When you stretch or shrink words, you just use this super convenient feature. You find the best takes, mark them, and they instantly get cut in for you. Everything else doesn't play in the main track, meaning FL Studio doesn't have this feature. So I, for example, do my vocal editing in Cubase instead. And let's think for a moment about how everyone prefers to wrap things up. Although that's not really crucial either. So it depends on who tends to use which format more. Live when you want to do something like DJing, or actually DJing too. This whole almost DJing thing is pretty trendy right now. It's called live looping. When you play something, loop it, it starts playing. Then you add something else, loop that, and it plays too. And you quickly layer different parts on top of each other like that. This kind of thing goes viral on TikTok and so on. You can do this in any program, but it's easiest to do in Ableton, for example. If, for example, you work with acoustic music that you record out of the box, that is not from inside the computer, like programming drums and plugins or recording guitar parts, but actually recording from external sources. So when you have a lot of external sources through microphones, line inputs, and so on, it's probably more convenient to use Cubase because, again, the editing. The editing is very convenient. Specifically, the audio track editing in Cubase is really well designed. It's great for tuning there. Very Audio is very convenient. In my opinion, it's better than all the others, including Melody Die too. Why? Because it happens in real time. We don't have to mess with it. We pull out this track, do something with it there. We listen, seems okay, export it, and then we listen to it in the context of the track. In Cubase, it happens instantly. We immediately hear how the note fits in the context of the track. Of course, what I'm explaining right now is unclear to beginners. Those who are more advanced understand what this means. What this means is that, in principle, it shouldn't really matter to you. So, where should you invest your time? Why? Because the program, let me say it again, seems complicated. But you'll master it, and after that, you can easily learn others. A second, a third, a fourth one. I've mastered 3, and I can also work with 2 others by feel. Once you understand one concept, how the mixer works, automation, sidechain, how to create a group, how to set up a send, everything else is just a matter of time. It's a question of speed, a question of habit, so it's not difficult anymore. So I recommend doing the following, because here your preference depends less on the software and more on you, on your own interface habits, on where you can intuitively and associatively work. Only a test will show you that. Download 5 programs for yourself. Pick the ones you already feel somewhat oriented with, and try writing a song in the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth programs. And pay attention to which one felt the easiest for you, keeping in mind, of course, that you're not very experienced in this yet. Taking these steps will certainly assist you in comprehensively understanding what you are most naturally suited for in the future. You clearly realize that you don't have much experience yet. Your foundation is just a few videos you might have watched on YouTube, and that's it. So in program number 1, you didn't understand anything at all, got frustrated, turned it off. In program 2, you understood something, wrote a bit, it worked out, but you didn't like it. In program 3, you managed to make a 2-minute track already. Maybe it's not super cool or anything, but you've already started writing, and now you have this idea forming in your head. You're already planning something, starting to pay attention to things. Here it's better to do it this way, there it's better to do it that way. You're already getting some interesting thoughts about your song, right? A tactic, a strategy is starting to take shape. So most likely, this is your music program. And then, of course, it's not perfect in some functions because, like I said before, one program might have a feature that's a 5 out of 5, while another program only scores a 3 for that same feature. But at the same time, the second program might have a different feature that's a 5, while the previous one only gets a 3 for it. That's basically how they all differ from each other. So there's really no extraordinary or revolutionary advantage to be found here. And maybe I'll take a moment to give you a minor, yet potentially incredibly helpful piece of advice in this regard, since this particular video is specifically intended for absolute beginners, especially for those of you who are just now in the process of choosing your very first professional music software. In general, when someone starts out in a new field, being aware of how inexperienced they are in this new area, they tend to become a bit susceptible to the opinions of those around them, friends who, quite often, aren't much more advanced than they are. In music in particular, we often fall victim to the Dunning-Kruger effect. When something starts to work out at first, a person enters that initial phase of confidence. And from there, they start handing out these absolute no alternative pieces of advice on really complex issues. Like, this is black, this is white, this is good, this is bad. If you come across someone like that, chances are they're not really that competent in music production, especially if the question is about choosing a music program, because that's a very multifaceted decision. And there are a lot of nuances to it. That's why people usually don't pick a music program once for their whole life. They end up choosing 2 or 3 times over the years. The first time is just to get started, to get over that initial entry barrier. And then the person starts to understand what they actually want. They realize that this program has certain features and that one has others. Like, I need this particular combination. So they consciously pick a second DAW for themselves and continue working in it. That's usually how it goes. Or they just stick with the previous one. So when you see a heated discussion thread somewhere, these debates about which music software is better are usually really intense. People are practically foaming at the mouth, ready to tear each other apart. It's all because everyone wants to validate their own choice, to prove that they're right. And so they start trying to convince everyone else. Why? Because deep down, they're not actually sure they're right. That's why they're trying to prove it. So whenever you see those kinds of discussion threads, you can immediately tell it's like kindergarten. It's kindergarten. So you just have to approach it with understanding. Because for people who've been making music for 10 or 15 years, this is how it looks. It looks like 2 baboons fighting in a cage, one for a coconut and the other for a banana, and they just can't come to an agreement. One says coconut is better, and the other yells banana is better. That's pretty much what these discussions about which music program is best look like from the outside. Like, there's only one right answer. They're all good. It's just a matter of some features here and there. That's it. And thank you. Never take part in those kinds of discussions. It'll immediately make you look like a newbie. All the best to you, friends.